Hey Brandon, I guess one of the first things that'd be cool to sort of find out about you because I think the sort of current generation of people watching high level jiu-jitsu will probably know you more as a figure off the mat rather than on it. Do you know what I mean? So for you, before the PGF started, before anything like that, I know obviously you got your black belt from Eddie Bravo. Could you tell me a little bit about your sort of like start in 10th planet and in jiu-jitsu in general?
Yeah, sure. So I got started in martial arts. My wife and I started together on the same day. We were just kind of looking for something we could do together that would be fun, that we could get some exercise. And so we were big UFC fans already. We're like, let's go learn martial arts. And so that's what we started work on. And we started in this art called Tung Sudo Mudok Kwan, which is like a Korean style. It's kind of like Taekwondo. Uh, and started with a really great teacher. His name was Jamie Webster, and he still teaches here in town. He's the man, but he's a super well-rounded martial artist. So we were learning Tung Soo Do, but he would also like make you learn other things from other styles just to expose you to more martial arts. Like so he was really well-rounded and loved like all martial arts. So like he studied boxing, he studied jujitsu, he studied Tai Chi. He did sword forms. You know what I'm saying? So like he dabbled in anything, and so his objective was to introduce you to martial arts, and then the part that really lit you up, for he would just encourage you to like pursue that part. And so for me, the grappling and the fighting side of it was what got me most excited. And so he just pushed me down that road. And so about 6 months in to training martial arts, I went to an Eddie Bravo seminar, and that's how I met Eddie and started learning from him. And so that was 2006. And yeah, I got all my jujitsu ranks from Eddie, just either traveling out to LA and staying, or chasing him all over the country for his seminars or whatever.
Well, that's what I was gonna say. Yeah, I think you're the first guy in the Southeast, aren't you, really, to spread 10th planet anywhere. So yeah, I mean that must have been quite hard doing quite a lot of traveling back and forth to LA back in the day, I imagine.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't easy, but I sort of look back on that, and I feel really proud of like how everything went down. I think it was helpful in teaching me how to learn. You know what I'm saying? Like how to learn more efficiently. So I had to learn how to learn. And I think that process really helped me learn that.
So I imagine then is that sort of like helped you as a coach as well now then? So obviously you've got your own school in to keep is that something that's helped you like spread that on to the next generation kind of thing? Help them learn how to learn?
Yeah, I definitely think that that's been a big part of it because, I didn't have somebody standing over me every class, like making corrections for me. So I had to learn how to make the corrections on my own just through distilling the information down into a simple, easy to use kind of format. But then also just through the experience of trial and error, just having to go out and throw out what works and what doesn't, and what in what situations. So yeah, I think learning those things definitely, uh, learning in that way definitely has helped me to make information more simple so that somebody else can grab it easier.
Yeah, I mean that's one of the I think that's kind of like a coach's role at the end of the day is basically to take whatever you struggled with and whatever took you years to master and break it down so the next person gets it in 6 months and then so on and
Yeah.
so on. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the
And
idea.
then and then one thing I think is quite interesting because I was actually speaking to Zach Mazzoni the other day.
All
It's
right.
quite cool that for some reason, I'm not really sure why. Obviously, a lot of the 10th planet guys have gone into promotion and actually building up the next generation of competitors that way. So that rather than focusing on your own schools, you've got stuff going on that helps hundreds of people, you know? Is there anything that you guys sort of, I know you can't speak for Zach, obviously, but is there anything that comes from Eddie Bravo himself? Because obviously, EBI was a huge part of his sort of like push for the sport to grow as well.
I think it's just, you know, Eddie has always encouraged us all to just kind of do what we want to do, and so Eddie's super entrepreneurial in a lot of ways, in that he'll just have he's a creative, he's a total creative, so he'll just have an idea and he'll go and run with it and try it, and he's always just encouraged us to be the same way. And yeah, definitely seeing EBI has always been like, oh wow, that would be really cool. Like what is the ultimate format, you know? And so having a couple of different promotions all within 10th Planet is pretty cool because we can kind of run a lot of experiments, you know. We can kind of run the EBI experiment, we can run the CJJ experiment, and finishers can have their own take, like they got their own take on EBI with that Molly Wop rule, which I think is a great addition. And then we're doing something like completely different, like a different way to explore competition jujitsu with the PGF. So yeah, I think it's really fun. And yeah, Eddie he's just the kind of dude who believes there's enough room for everybody. So he encourages you, if you got an idea, just take it and run with it.
Yeah, and it definitely works because I mean, like I said, each of those promotions, what Eddie's done, but then what Zach's done, and what you've done, they've all been successes in their own right. You know what I mean? So I think it shows that if you do just sort of like put in the hard work, run with an idea that you've got, you can make it good. And I think for me personally, I've watched not every season of the PGF, but I've watched. I think I missed one or two since season two. So for me, I've seen that you've made quite a lot of changes in the rules over the years. And it seems like something changes pretty much every season. So for you, is that something that you make a conscious effort to sort of like revise stuff after each year or after each season? Sorry.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. I want to have the product be as good as possible. And the nice thing about running the PGF like as a full season, but all compressed down into a week, is that we can run we can run these experiments a lot more regularly. So like, you know, we're doing 6 broadcasts in a week. Well, that's to do 6 broadcasts and get 6 broadcasts worth of data. Like it would take you a couple of years to put together enough promotions, but we're doing that all in one week. So we're gathering 6 times the data. We're getting 6x the experience every time that we run. And so, yeah, I think that's a huge advantage for us actually. Um, anyway, go ahead.
No, you're exactly right. I think that again, from my point of view, like watching the season unfold, you watch so many matches over the space of 1 week that, like you said, in something like EBI, you've got maybe 10, 15 matches in one day, which is cool. But obviously, you might see a problem or something come up, but you'll only see it once or twice. Whereas for you guys at PGF, you'll see it a dozen times in a week, and it becomes really obvious that, oh, that's something you need to fix, or that's
Yes.
something you can make a little better. Is there anything that you've seen from the last season that you're planning on changing now for season eight?
Yeah, that's a great question. The refereeing and the stalling rules is something that we're working hard to really dial in and get right. We think we're definitely on the right idea, but we want to push that forward and have it more defined, have it more consistent, like less objectivity or less subjectivity to it, where okay, there's definite lines that you cross to turn that into a penalty. And so, yeah, we've worked a lot with our referees in the off season, both before season 7 and since season 7. And I think we're going to have an even better product for everybody with this iteration of the PGF.
That's cool as well because I think speaking as a spectator first, I think that's the main problem in every jiu-jitsu rule set is trying to combat the stalling aspect of it. Um, and then I think for PGF specifically, it can be tough because that's kind of like the swings and roundabouts of it because you have so many matches across the week. Guys do get beaten up and they do get knackered and they do want to sort of like ride out the last match of the day sometimes, I think, which is fair enough. You can't blame them for trying it. But yeah, it's something that if it's something that you've noticed and you want to put a stop to or try to mitigate, that's only a good thing for the fans. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I think having just the short 6-minute matches, I think actually helps in that regard because guys they come out and they get to work way earlier in the match. And so I really don't think we lose any time by cutting down to 6 minutes. I think we end up with the same amount of grappling.
Yeah, I think to be honest, there was a study a little while ago, which basically said that like the number of submissions doesn't increase once you go past. I think it's like 6 or 10 minutes is one of the two. But
Mm,
as you get longer matches, all that happens is the action slows and spreads out over a longer period. You
yeah.
only get more submissions when you go from like 4 to 5 to 6 minutes when you get those like kids matches and stuff like that are a lot shorter. Obviously, it is tough to finish that in that period of time, but once you get to adult time limits of 5, 6 minutes, it doesn't really get any higher after that because it's just like I said, you can only do so much, can't you? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, I think that the jujitsu across the board, like as an industry, I think everybody should really look at pulling their time limits down. Like we've even considered going to 5 minute rounds before, but I just felt like that was a bridge too far. So 6 minutes for the full match. Like CJI and AIGA, they do 5 minutes, but they do 5 minute increments. So they're actually like 15-minute matches, all of those. And that's a better way to do it. If you're going to do it, I think like you're going to have long matches. I think that's a better way to do it. Both of those.
Yeah, I think as well that that really does limit any stalling because there's just less time to work in total. So I mean, by
Yeah.
the time that you've built up a lead on points or you're in a position where you might stall, there's probably only 30 seconds left. Whereas in a 10-minute match, that could be halfway through the match, and then people have got to sit through the rest of it then.
Yeah. FPI made the move recently to their opening bouts are all 6 minutes, which I think is really smart. And I think it didn't change the quality of the product at all when Fight Pass made that change. And so I think we're going to start seeing a lot of people move into that. I think everybody's kind of over the sub only phase. Like we ran the experiment a couple of times. Like, all right, we all kind of get it. Like we love romantically, we love the idea of sub only, no time limit, but we actually none of us want to watch it, even those of us that love it.
I
So
think that's pretty much it in a nutshell as well. Sub only is something that people want to do or they want to like take part in, but they don't
yeah,
want to. Nobody wants to watch it.
yeah. And I think it's moving the opposite direction now.
Yeah, like you said, there's quite a few promotions that are focusing on either shorter matches or, like you said, maybe a longer match, but breaks in between each round so that everyone comes in fresher. And one thing that I think will be good to talk about as well is taking it back a step to sort of at the beginning of the PGF. What made you want to make it like a season? Because at the time that you first came out, it was literally unheard of. You know what I mean? So where'd you get that sort of idea from?
Well, from a couple of places. First of all, I've been like a giant sports fan my whole life. Like love American football and especially I love basketball. So I've always been plugged into like consuming sports always happened in a team and league environment. So to me that's what sports is. It's like teams and a league and we got a champion at the end. But what is it that makes those leagues great? Like why do we get so attached to those? It's because we see them over and over. Like each season is a full story. It's a full storybook all on its own. And so that you get an opportunity to move through the ups and downs, the failures and the successes with your team. And you get to become a fan of them because of their style. Maybe not because they're going to win the title, but just because you vibe with that team or that individual for some reason. And so I always felt like that was what was missing from jujitsu. So I always knew that a league was the right idea, but nobody had really tried it in a way that was like potentially sustainable. And the first way that we tried it was not sustainable for us. We would have had to have had a big investor right away to pull that idea off. Where we did it every Friday night in season one instead of having everything smashed down into a week. And then starting with season two, we brought everybody in and did all the matches during the course of a week. And then we've done it that way ever since. And eventually, though, I think that we will get back to doing Friday night jujitsu. That is where I see it going ultimately. But right now, still some more experiments to run, some more learning to do. But yeah, the idea for doing a league just comes from being a fan of sports and having consumed sports that way and just feeling like, the team sports just allow you to get way more connected as a fan. And I think that that's part of what we're missing.
I think you're right as well. That for me, whenever you watch like a weekend tournament, so like a longer event, like AECC, CGI, something like that, you get attached to people that make runs, but obviously half the field loses on the first match, and
Yeah,
you don't see them again, you don't hear from them, and you, in the nicest way possible for those guys, you kind of forget about them as the tournament goes
that's
on.
totally
Um,
true.
there's quite a few guys, that have been at ADCC a couple of times, and they're not anywhere near as well known as they should be. just because they've gone out in the first round maybe twice, three times, that kind of thing. Whereas the PGF, obviously, it happens quite a lot where some of your guys make sort of slow burns and they start out in the first day or two and they're maybe not as noticed. But then as the week progresses, they really find their feet and build into it. I think the last season that we saw, Chris Wojcik was a really good example of that, where the
Yeah.
first day he was slow and then literally all of a sudden he was a real contender and he ended up coming second, you know? So it just goes to show that you, like I said, you need that kind of build up to be able to follow someone no matter how they start. And I think that's a really good thing for the PGF personally.
Yeah, I totally agree. I feel like a season is definitely the best way to do sports storytelling. And storytelling is the most important thing that there is. That's the one thing that everybody can understand is a story. So whether you're a fan of the sport or the individual or not, if you can connect to the story, you can connect to the individual and then the sport.
Yeah, and I think one thing that I like about PGF is when you do the opening day draft, it gives you a chance if someone does watch that. 'Cause I know some people just go straight to the action, obviously, but if you do watch the draft originally, then I think it gives you, because of you and TJ on the mic and everything, you're able to like build the starting ground of those stories, which people will see unfold. This person lost this person last year or whatever, and it gives people like a good idea of what to look for over the next few days. So I think that's a cool advantage that you've got that. How long is the draft? Like 4 or 5 hours to
Yeah, it
really sort
usually
of like
goes about
talk through.
two or 3 hours. Yeah.
Oh, you have the pre-show stuff as well, don't you? Obviously,
Yeah.
that's what I'm thinking of. But yeah, so it's a good amount of time to really sort of build everything up, which I think works well personally.
Yeah, and man, this is cool for season 8. We're actually doing the draft about 3 weeks ahead of time. So the teams and the schedule and a lot of extra media opportunities and opportunities for fans to, you know, prognosticate, make predictions and just talk and get buzz going. So the draft is going to be on March 1st this year. And the season will be March 24th through 28th.
And then I know you guys have, is it 4 qualifiers this time around?
4 qualifiers. That's right. January the 11th in Decatur, Alabama. January the 18th, we're in Boston, Massachusetts. January the 25th in Austin, Texas. And February the 8th in Las Vegas, Nevada.
And for anyone who is sort of considering competing in those events, I think it's important to note that although the winners obviously get a ticket straight to the main show, I've noticed that you guys do pick up a few people where they've been impressive in the qualifiers, even if they haven't won. Maybe they've got to the final, or maybe they've had a deep run 2, 3 times over. I've seen you guys pick them up and bring them to the main show, or bring them in as like a reserve or something like that, which is I think is cool because it gives people a good opportunity then to make the most of those qualifiers.
Yeah, and that's what I want. I want the qualifiers to feel like a big deal. Like ultimately, I see the qualifiers being a really important part. Like that's the preseason. It's when we start learning stories on some of these athletes for the first time. And I would like it eventually if the only way in was through qualifiers. And maybe I had like 4 invites, but everybody else just came through the qualifiers. And so ultimately, I probably will have it arranged as something like that. But right now, we only guarantee the spot on the regular roster to the winner. And then we look to take, other roster spots from people that impress us or bring guys that impress us in as alternates. So, and, if you watch the PGF, you know that the alternates usually get some playing time. So even
Yeah,
showing up as an alternate is going to be a big opportunity for you.
yeah, I think you're right as well. That I'm pretty sure last season every alternate ended up stepping on the mat. I'm pretty sure
Yeah,
the
that's right.
two guys per team, and that's not uncommon either.
Yeah, that's not the first time that's happened.
And with the sort of build up, like leading into it, those 4 qualifiers, is there anything that you sort of look for in specific competitors? So obviously, like you said, the winners are guaranteed a slot, but do you look more for who does better or more for who's exciting sort of thing?
Who's going to make good TV, who's going to be fun, who's going to be a good mix with the people that we already have in the roster. That's a big part of this is the actual matchmaking. You got to put together a match, put together in the case of the PGF a full roster that works well together and makes good TV together, makes good matches together with the rule set that you've got. Because there's some guys that they're excellent. They're going to win any tournament that they enter, but they're not going to get a lot of subs. Well, that guy's not going to be very fun on the PGF. He's going to end up in a lot of draws because he's not going to score. And he might be positionally, he might be a winner, but he might not be fun to watch. So if he's not finishing people, like, that's tough. That's a tough sell in that PGF format because the only way to score is to get the submission. So yeah, I mean, it's tough. Picking the roster is a tough gig, dude, honestly, because you got to have the right mix of guys. They have to all work well together.
Yeah, and I can imagine, like you said, if you've got to think about not just performances on the mat, but the mic skills, that sort of thing, like how they're actually gonna show up
That's
on
a
the
big
day. Like,
factor. Yeah. And honestly, like, do I think that you'll be easy to work with for the week? Because we're about to have to spend a week together. Like, I don't want to deal with a diva all week. Like, if you're bringing the culture down, like, we'll move on. Like, there's a lot of people that want these spots. So if you're pulling the culture down, like, there's plenty of shows that you could be on, but it's not this one.
that's fair. No, that makes sense, to be honest with you, and especially like from a personal point of view, like you said, you've got to work with that person for a week straight. It's not going to be a good experience sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
That's a big factor.
for this season as well, it's that lightweight, isn't it? 155.
Yep. That's right.
So the last time you did that, I know, was season 4, and I think it was Reese LaFever that won, wasn't
That's right. Very good.
it?
Look at you.
Do you know if he's actually coming back to defend the title this time around, or have you not worked that out yet?
We haven't announced that yet, but I'll go ahead and tell you right now that yes, Reese LaFever, the defending 155-pound champion, is returning. And I'll also tell you that this is probably the most stacked 155-pound division in the history of jiu-jitsu. As the names that are in this, they're already confirmed. As these names start dropping here at the first part of the year, you're going to freak out, dude. The 155 division for PGF 8 is off the charts. It's so stacked. It's going to be the best division you've ever seen. It's nasty.
It doesn't surprise me, to be honest. And I actually spoke to Ryan Aitken just after he won the last season, and he said a similar kind of thing. He basically said that he thought the reason he really wanted to do season 7 is because this was basically going to be his easiest chance to win BGF. Because the point that he made is obviously with your the 100 grand prize money now, it's just going to attract more and more people as they see that it's like a workable thing that is going to continue.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, I imagine you might have found it yourself when you do something like that the first time round. Some people are a little unsure if it's going to go ahead. They're unsure if the prize money is going to decrease or something. You know what I mean? Like people don't have the full amount of trust, but you've done it twice now already. So right now, everyone knows that this is legit. It's going ahead. Everything's to plan, and they know they're going to get 15 matches in a week and a chance for that grand prize. You know.
Yeah, and you're right. It has to be something sustainable. It has to be something that and repeatable and scalable. So learning to build this thing has been a crazy experience, man. There's been a lot of new skills for me to learn that I didn't really know that I was going to have to learn. So like I knew that this idea was good enough to to warrant a strong position in the community, but I actually don't know that I expected myself to be the guy running a jujitsu league, but here we are.
Well, to be honest, I think PGF had a good like initial start. Like the first couple of seasons, you built some steam. Like I said, I just stumbled across you guys in season after season 2. I think I watched like halfway through it when I found out it was going on. And yeah, like I started hearing more about it, started watching each season sort of thing. But then obviously you had that huge bump beginning of last year, obviously when you announced the 100 grand prize money. Was that something that you sort of like initially planned on, or did that really sort of like escalate out of nowhere?
Well, it wasn't out of nowhere. So it was definitely intentional that we made the move um to Fight Pass. So like we set our sights on that. So season 5, we basically came together before the season started and they said, "Hey, let's give this one really good run. Let's make this basically a demo tape to give to UFC Fight Pass." because the first 4 seasons we'd really been just trying to craft the idea, and like you said, we would change stuff. Oh, that didn't quite work. We could tweak that, and some of the tweaks, seasons 1 through 3, were pretty big. After season 4, we knew what format we wanted, so we knew that we knew exactly what it was going to look like. We just had to run the process again. I said, okay, now that we know what we want to do, we know what the game actually looks like. Let's try to build this demo for Fight Pass. So yeah, I knew that we were going to try to make it as good and as big as possible, but and it took a lot of work to get to that point. At the same time, it felt like we were just like chiseling away. You know what I mean? We're building it really slowly. And then all of a sudden, whoa, big injection, and so, yeah, the year started off crazy. So since season 5, it's been pretty nuts. It's actually been completely nuts.
No, it's been that from like the outside looking in as well. The sort of explosion in popularity has been crazy over 2024. And obviously, you did 2 seasons last year. Is that the format you're sticking with as well? Two seasons per year?
three,
Okay, cool.
3 seasons per year. And we're going to have qualifiers all throughout the year because of that. Of course, we'll have at least 3 qualifiers before every event. We're going to do, we got plans to move into some other stuff as well. But the main thing that you'll be seeing from us will be the big event and the qualifiers. And then we've got a lot of good YouTube content coming, like starting with like daily content here in January. So I'm actually really excited about that as well. Some like behind the scenes looks at like the way that the industry is moving, what we're trying to do, what does our daily workload look like, pretty fun. I think it's fun at least.
No, it is cool. It is interesting because it's something that I think, again, from the outside looking in, is something that people don't get to see much of. Like most big promotions keep everything pretty much under wraps. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Um, like from my perspective, the only reason I know half the stuff I do about promotions around the world is just from doing this job as a like fan and a spectator. You don't know anything, you just know what happens when the lights go on, sort of thing. And then for you guys, obviously, you're doing those 3 shows a year or 3 seasons a year. Is there any scope or room for actually increasing that at all as well in the future, or do you think that's pretty much you maxed out with your time?
Well, I wanted to do 4 per year. I wanted to do one every quarter. But I think right now I can't I don't have the resources to do 4 per year. I got to do 3. And so even just my own resources and time, like four would be crazy. 4 would be pretty crazy. 3 is going to be crazy enough.
Yeah, like you said, it's even with doing 3, that's a 4 month lead in. That's not a lot of time to plan a major
Yeah.
week-long event.
Yeah. It's going to be wild.
And have you got any plans for like weight classes for the rest of the year or anything like that, or is that
Yeah.
all sort of in progress?
Yeah. So I think that what we're going to do is do an absolute next season for season 9, or so not next season, season 8, 155. The next one, absolute. The next one, we'll probably circle back to 175 again. I might flip those though, those last two, so that season 10 could be the absolute and kind of like make a giant deal about season 10, PGFX.
Yeah, no, it's a good it's a good round number, and you're finishing off the year on a massive high note as well. So I
Yeah.
think that'd be really cool to be fair.
Yeah. I think,
Um,
I think that's probably the way to play it, but don't quote me on that.
yeah, I know obviously anything past this season coming up is obviously subject to change, and I think one of the cool things about doing an absolute season is that you'll probably be able to get more than one Brazilian champion as well, because I imagine Ryan Aiken's definitely going to be up for it. There's a couple of other guys at the similar sort of weight class, 205 and below, that probably would be quite happy to take a shot.
Oh yeah. I think we'd see a lot of PGF vets, and that may be the way to do it. Like PGF vets only, that could be cool.
Yeah, that'd be really cool. And with obviously the rest of this year now sort of like starting to take shape and starting to be mapped out, have you got anywhere else you want to take PGF? Like, is there anywhere you want to take it like globally sort of thing? So obviously it's quite centered around America at the moment.
Yeah, we're definitely looking to expand. Probably for that last event of 2025, we'll be taking that international. Now, location, we've toyed around with a couple of different ideas. I'll just leave that in secret for now, but a couple of them are pretty cool. A couple of them are pretty cool. So that's really all I can say right now.
Yeah, there's a few places that would be quite cool to see, even just like a qualifier. You know what I mean? Whether it's like somewhere in Europe, the UK, or even like South America. There's a cool few places that you could get some real good talent from. To be fair.
I will definitely get a PGF European qualifier going this year for sure. I'll definitely do that, and I'll definitely get a Mexican qualifier going too. So I do plan to have at least those two. Now, when and for which season, I don't know. It won't be for season 8. The qualifiers are already set, but possibly for season 9 and almost certainly for season 10. So we'll see. But I definitely am planning that.
Nice, nice. That's pretty much everything I wanted to run through with you, to be honest with you, Brandon. But is there anything that you want to sort of mention, or anyone you wanted to shout out to, or anything like that before I let you go?
No, man. Just make sure you're following PGF World on all channels, and then make sure you're a part of my website, bjj365.club. Go check that out, and then follow me on all the socials, brandonmc.ninja.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for your time, and take it easy. All right.
All right, thanks, man.
Yeah, take care.